Okay, first of all, let's look at the first cultural dimension, identity, or the identity. So this basic problem is about how people identify themselves. So everyone living in a society, in a community, right? Like you live in Taiwan, we have people live in different countries. So how do you identify yourself and other people? Do you see more similarities between you and other fellows, or do you see more uniqueness and differences between you and others? How do you identify the horizontal relationship, interpersonal relationship between you and other fellows? And here there are two extreme spectrums. One is collectivism, and the other one is individualism. Okay, collectivism means people tend to have collective mind. So people care about collective interests more than individual interests. Individualism means the basic unit of society is individual. Okay, every single man and woman. So personal and individual interests will come before the group interest. Okay, so we have a different kind of values here. Okay, one is a group interest is very important, and the other one is an individual performance and individual interest. Now, when it comes to work and business culture, then let's look at all these three things. Different cultural values will affect people's definition or loyalty, and people's way of making decisions, and people's way of team working. So what does it mean? For example, people from collectivist culture, okay, they are collectivist. When they think about loyalty, they will tend to be loyal to the group they are in, or they serve for the group. Okay, so we belong to the same company, we belong to the same club, so everybody works together. Okay, this group, this company is very important. So when everybody identifies with the same group, with the same company, and people are regarded as loyal to this group, loyal to this organization. Okay, this kind of behavior, this kind of mindset is rewarded. But in the individualist culture, people don't think so. Okay, individuals and people are loyal to themselves. So what does it mean? It means that, yes, I work for this company, I work for this corporation, but I'm not going to die for this organization. I'm not going to work to death for this company. I know what is right to do. I take this job because I like this job, because I like what I'm doing. So the loyalty means I'm loyal to myself, I'm true to myself, my individual free will. Okay, so maybe people from two different kind of cultures, they all work very hard, but the motivation and the driving behind their hard work will come from different values. Okay, decision making in collective society. When people make a decision, they will tend to consult many stakeholders' opinions. Okay, so for example, think about your own example. When you make a decision for yourself, about your life, about your study, how do you form your decision? In collective society, people will tend to conclude their opinion based on many people's ideas. They will try to make everybody happy. Although it's not possible, but people try to do that. Okay, collective mind, collective decision is important to the group. But in the individualist society, no, when people make decisions, especially in the company organization, they will try to make a decision based on objective research data. Okay. Why? Because this individual, when this individual has to make a decision, he will think, this is my decision, so I need to be responsible for this decision. I need to collect the data. I need to have very good resources and information for me to make a decision. And people tend to make decisions for themselves. Okay, individual decision maker is very common in the individualist society, but in a collective society or collective culture, collective decision is common. Okay, finally, the teamwork. In collective society, you will find that when people work together as a team, they share the final result and they share the responsibility. It means that if something is done greatly, something is done well, okay, so the whole group, 5 of us, share the joy. Okay, there's no particular hero in our group. But in individualist culture, they have a different value. When we do work together as a team, every team member has distinguished job to do. So like putting puzzles together. So everybody contributes his or her ability or talent to this particular job. So when this job is properly done, people can easily identify which part is done best, and this part is done by whom. Okay? So the individual performance is important, and everybody knows whose job is what and how we are going to identify individual achievements. So people don't really share the achievements or the success together, because if one part is failed, the person who's in charge of that failure or failing part has to take responsibility. Okay, so then different cultures, when they work together in business, of course, there will be misunderstandings and there will be different kind of working styles. You can imagine that in a society, if you work in a society in like a collective society, and you care so much about your personal performance, and you want to get your personal bonus, you want to be the hero, then you will put great pressure on other people, right? Because people want to work together, but you want to be the single one hero, then probably that will cause some problems in the work chemistry. So think about this, okay? Later I will ask you, what would be your culture value? Which kind of culture value do you believe more, or do you tend to be? In every society, normally we have mainstream culture value. For example, in Taiwan, I guess most of you, after listening to my description, you can tell what kind of Taiwanese culture tend to be. Does Taiwanese culture tend to be more collective or individual? What would be your answer? Mainstream culture. In mainstream culture, according to my observation, I would say Taiwanese culture tend to be more collective. In contrast to some other English-speaking cultures, for example. Okay, so cultures are always relative, all right? So, but if we compare Taiwanese culture with Japanese culture, for example, then probably Japanese people will think Taiwanese people are more individualistic and they are more collective. So cultures are always relative in two different spectrums. So you can think about it, okay? When you come from collective culture, how can you work successfully, properly with the people from individualistic culture, okay? So this is the thing that we have to work on as we are developing our intercultural communication competence. Okay, next let's look at the second cultural dimension. This is power distance. Power distance. Power distance or hierarchy indicates the degree of inequality between the people that is assumed to be a natural state of affairs. The degree of a power distance is different. In different countries and cultures, it varies from small to large. So we have a small power distance, and we have a large power distance. The measurement is always relative, remember. Okay, so here when we're talking about cultural dimensions, and in each cultural dimensions, we have two spectrums. They are relative, okay? We compare one with another. And it also differs within the country. Okay, for example, within the country, in Taiwan, for example, between generations, elder generation, younger generation, people will have different ideas about power distance. People will have a different kind of cultural values. And levels of social ladder. Okay, so we will talk about this later. All right, so when we look at power distance, so we have large power distance and small power distance. So what does it mean? For example, in the large power distance culture, when you're working in a company, what you will see? You will see a very steep hierarchy in the company. Like you have employees, and you have a junior manager, senior manager, director, senior director, vice president, and president. And so there are many levels in the management hierarchy. Okay, many different positions, and you can imagine that people who possess the higher position, they have greater power. So this is power distance, means someone who is at the top and at the bottom, the distance is very large, and also the power can be very different. Now, in small power distance culture, no matter in the society or in the corporation, in the company, you will see flat organization. So in flat organization, you probably will only see employees, managers, and presidents, CEO. So only 3 levels. And when the levels of hierarchy are much fewer like this, then people are equal to each other, right? Many employees can make decisions and can have their own free will and their own jobs. So this is a large power distance culture and a small power distance culture. Okay, now let's look at how this kind of cultural value manifests itself in our working life in business. The first one is in the society, social classes. In a society of a large power distance, you will find that there are many classes, like upper class, upper middle class, lower middle class, working class, many classes in the society. In this kind of society, once you are born in a particular class, you can't really change your class for whole your life. But in smaller power distance culture, everyone is equal. People believe that they are equal in the society. So everybody share the power, and this kind of country normally is more democratic. So everybody has the right to vote, has the right to decide things related to their life. Now, let's look at within the company and corporation, we have a corporate hierarchy, right? So in large power distance culture, people will tend to believe that managers, or especially top managers, should be very powerful, should be very authoritative and decisive. Why? Because you see, they enjoy more power, they probably get much higher salary, and of course, they are expected to take over leadership and take more responsibility. But in small power distance culture, the corporate hierarchy is flat, right? So when people make decisions for themselves, they also take responsibilities for their decisions. And here we talk about decision making. In large power distance culture, you can imagine that the decision is made by the top manager. But in small power distance culture, employees are invited to make a decision together with the managers. Okay, so this is in power distance culture. Now, let me give you some more daily examples. What kind of problem in communication may take place when people from different cultures? They can have some misunderstandings or problems in communication. Can you imagine that? For example, in larger power distance culture, managers, you can imagine that they are expected to be respected, right? And in school, teachers will think they are teachers, students are students. The power distance is large. Or in the family, okay, parents have more authority and children should follow the parents. Okay, so this is what happens in partisan culture. And I can tell you that in Taiwan, for example, I grew up in large partisan culture. Okay, so when I was younger, I was told that, all right, I had to follow my father's will, and I listened to my teachers, and basically I respected teachers, elders, managers, naturally, okay, because it is what I was told, and I accepted this kind of cultural value. But for a younger generation, for example, also in Taiwan, you grew up in Taiwan, right? What is your cultural value? What is your cultural tendency? Do you believe in more larger partisans or smaller partisans? Maybe in your generation, you will feel that, okay, your teachers are like your friends, your parents are like your friends, your managers are like your friends. Your cultural value can be very different from last generation. Why? Because culture changes, right? Okay, so you see, even within a country, the same place, people at different age can think and behave very differently. Yeah. So very often, when I was younger, when I was studying in college, when I saw my teacher, very often I saw them, I would bow to them naturally and say good morning or 你好. But nowadays, now I'm a teacher in school. My students, they saw me, they will say, hi, Cindy. And they don't call me teacher or professor. They will say, you. What do you like? So they treat me as their friends. Okay, in the company, we also see many examples like this. Okay, last generation, our managers, they want to respect from their younger employees, but younger employees tend to treat their managers as friends. Why? Because of different cultural values. Okay, different cultural tendency. So later we will talk about how do you get along with people from different cultures. Because at one spectrum, people from large partisans, they may tend to think, oh, these young people, this group of people, very rude or ill-mannered and not well educated. But people from smaller partisans will think the other group of people are arrogant or too authoritative. You know, they are not democratic enough. They are not modern. Okay, so misunderstandings can be there, and we need to think about it. Again, when we are developing our intercultural communication competence, we need to think about how can we communicate successfully? How can we understand people from different cultures in a more sensible way? Okay?